4 Black authored books that are perfect for scary season. Let's dig in. Hi, my name is Carly. I read and review historical fiction. So if historical fiction is your jam, then definitely subscribe, stay tuned, check out every single one of the books that I'm about to talk about because they're all so good, unbelievably relevant to our current sitch. And I can't say enough good things about all 4 of these. They're similar in certain ways, but each is very different and for different people. So I'm going to try and do my best to justify why I think everyone should read them, but who I think they would be perfect for, if that makes sense. Each of the books that I feature today are going to be linked below in the caption. I'm going to present these in no particular order, but there is a clear standout favorite for me, starting with the most approachable, the most lush, the most haunting, and the most otherworldly. I'm going to first feature the book that I read most recently, and that is Conjure Women by Afia Atakora. And I pulled this from my TBR jar for the month of September. And I'm so glad that I did because A, it's perfect for this time of year, and B, it's been a while since I've read a sinister BIPOC authored book. In this book, we have 2 female main characters, a mother and daughter. The primary main character is the daughter, Rue. Rue has grown up on the plantation during slavery when her mother has been the healer / midwife for the community of slaves. Her mother has suddenly passed away, and now Rue has to use all of the things that she's learned to kind of take her mother's place. And in a sense, Rue is not as skilled as her mother. But as we learn, Rue has skills of her own that really kind of buoy the spirits and take care of her community. The majority of Rue's storyline takes place during Reconstruction, so slavery has ended. She and her fellow former slaves are still living on the plantation without a white master. And one day, a young baby is born who kind of scares everyone, frightens everyone. He's born in a caul, and he has these super dark black eyes, and his skin is almost scale-like. And after he is born, all these strange things start happening, including deaths of other children. Rue is very protective of this young boy who she knows is very different. And throughout the course of the book, she's doing what she can to protect him while also trying to protect the lives of the other children and the other people in the community. And at times, the community turns on her and turns toward religion as a source of, support or truth or hope. And there's this kind of tug and pull between Rue and this traveling preacher who comes to town. Overall, I thought this was a great book about the role that women play in helping to sustain the lives of those around them. It's a novel about truth telling and betrayal and suspicions. Overall, I thought it was a great look at the power of kind of folklore and faith and where those two collide. The author does a great job of incorporating kind of those folklore and almost fairy tales. You meet Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox in this book, as well as just other kind of cultural practices that the slaves brought with them to Africa, to the colonies. And I loved that glimpse into Black culture and the heritage behind that, and the heritage of those stories, and the stories that we use to kind of make sense of right versus wrong and to shape our lives. It has a hint of witchiness. So these women, Rue and her mother, are conjure women. So there is this element of kind of otherworldliness. It's not a horror novel, so it's not scary, but it definitely has some haunting elements. So you've got haints, you've got a little bit of kind of that voodoo culture. And overall, just a terrific book that I really, really, really loved. Junie published earlier this year, and so many people fell hard for this book. I did enjoy this. This was not my favorite book of these four. So I would say, or maybe I should say, of these four, this is my least favorite book. And I'll tell you why. I really struggle with young adult, and this is at its heart a young adult novel. There are some adult themes, but we have a young female protagonist who makes some really just not so great choices that most of us, kind of like most of us when we're young teenagers. But I just personally struggle with YA a little bit, and this book was no exception. However, I definitely think that it should be on your radar if you love really beautiful, lyrical, lush prose. Erin Crosby Eckstein nails it. She really pulls you in to plantation life and creates or conjures up for you what life was like for our young female main character and her family. Junie and her family are enslaved. She's haunted by the recent death of her sister, for which she really has no explanation as to what really happened. Her mother has since passed as well, and she's being raised by her grandparents. She's also the same age as the young mistress of the house. She's been raised with this young mistress, so they are friends. And Junie has been taught to read. She's invited into the big home to play with the young mistress. And there's this kind of narrative around what it means to be so close to the young mistress who's now of marriageable age. These visitors, these wealthy visitors from New Orleans come to the plantation as guests, and we suddenly see the dynamic changing between Junie and her young mistress as her young mistress is kind of enthralled with these visitors and with the idea of marrying into this family. Of course, when she marries, Junie's going to go with her and leave all that she knows behind, and that terrifies her. She's really focused on making sure that she does whatever she can to stay at the plantation with her family. She doesn't want to be separated from them. But also, there's this kind of other storyline about what happened to her sister, and discovering what happened. Her sister starts to haunt her. She's a haint, and she's coming back to Junie to help Junie figure out what happened so that Junie can kind of right wrongs. This one definitely had some moments that were a little hair-raising, but it's, of the four, I think also pretty tame and not scary. The scary part of this story is slavery and what happens to Junie and her family and her fellow slaves on this plantation. I loved the adventure elements of this story. The themes in this book were really powerful. And again, the prose is absolutely stunning. And you feel like you're there. I loved that about this book, and therefore we'll be reading more from this author. This is her debut, which is really, really remarkable. Let me read you a little bit of this. "You all right?" Auntie asks. "All right." She's the farthest it gets from all right. She tries to look at Auntie, to placate her worry with a bit of eye contact and a smile, but as soon as their eyes meet, Uncle George is in Junie's memory. He exists in the flesh, so nearby, yet he may as well be in another world. Getting to him means risking the punishments Mud told her about, the type of suffering that makes you beg for death. Telling Auntie about Uncle George isn't a kindness, but a cruelty, opening a wound that's long sealed shut, giving hope where none truly exists. She averts her eyes and goes back to chopping. "It's just in my head is all," Junie says. It really is phenomenally well written if you're okay with a young female protagonist. Up next is a book that you have no doubt heard about, and for good reason. This was a 5-star read, hands down one of the most haunting books I've ever read. This is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. And it is about a young brother and sister who encounter the local landowner's young son while out on a walk, and a scuffle ensues, and the young brother, who is black, kicks the young white landowner's son. As a result, he has to go to a reformatory school. And at this reformatory school, 10 kinds of hell exists. It is so haunting. It is so evocative and lush, and you 100% feel like you are there. I could not put this book down at a certain point, and everyone that I know that has read this has absolutely loved it and described it as an all-time favorite. I think one of the scariest things about this book is that it's set in the 1950s, not that long ago. And many of the things described in this book were true of reformatory schools in the South up to that point. And it's absolutely terrifying, the abuse and horrors that these young boys had to live through just because they were black. It conjures up a lot of feelings about our modern day policing and incarceration and just overall persecution of black men. And I think that the author does a great job drawing those parallels for you as a reader subtly. It is definitely more on the scarier side, but it's also not super scary. So don't let that dissuade you from reading this book. The true scary part of this book are the horrors that these young men faced. There are haints, so there are ghosts in this story, but more importantly, there are monsters in this story. And those monsters are these racist, awful, terrible people in the lives of these young boys at this reformatory school. I cannot say enough about this book. If you have not read it, why? It is stunning. It's perfect for this time of year, kind of as summer is bleeding into fall. And it's absolutely lush and otherworldly at times. Let me read you a little bit of this. Miles away, back toward town, the courthouse bell was ringing so faintly that Robert's ears missed every other toll. But the thin breeze carried the bell like a memory of long ago. Was Mama ringing to him? Was music her way of watching him? He strained to hear the bell song, not wanting to miss a note, and the music carried an image of Main Street's colorful awnings and Miss Lottie's house on Lower Spruce. With every toll, he forgot about the sun burning through his thin work shirt to his scarred and bloodied back. He floated away free in the chimes. Then the bell stopped, and the day's heat smothered the endless cornfield. The cornstalks were already tall in late June, up just past Robert's eye line, shiny green tips as far as he could see, except where two muddy tracks were parked near the fence on the farm road back toward the gate. The corn wouldn't be ready for harvest until fall, so none of the corn cobs had grown in. The field looked like rows of giant weeds, tall enough to walk through, tall enough to disappear in, especially if he stayed low. It's so good. Read it. Read this book. Lastly, probably my favorite book on this list is Jessamine Ward's Let Us Descend. And this book, for sure, is not going to be for everybody. So let me just say that aloud right now. If you do not like fever dream books, this is not for you. But if you like books written by poets that are very poetic, with just stunning imagery and an otherworldly vibe, you've got to read this book. So this one is much more of a fairy tale, if you will. It read a bit like Dante's Circles of Hell. I cannot say enough about this book. It's so stunning. It's hard for me to put into words exactly what this book is about, so let me read you a little bit of this synopsis. Beautifully rendered and heart-wrenching, searching, harrowing, replete with transcendent love, the novel is a journey from the rice fields of the Carolinas to the slave markets of New Orleans and into the fearsome heart of a Louisiana sugar plantation. Anais, sold south by the white enslaver who fathered her, is the reader's guide through this hellscape. As she struggles through the miles-long march, Anais turns inward, seeking comfort from memories of her mother and stories of her African warrior grandmother. She opens herself to a world beyond this world, one teeming with spirits, earth and water, myth and history, spirits who nurture and give, and those who manipulate and take. Ward leads readers through the descent and ultimately the rebirth and reclamation. I'm getting weepy thinking about this book and how stunning it is. It is one of the most vivid portrayals of slavery and enslavement and human bondage that I've ever read. I was completely enthralled by this author's storytelling. And there are moments in this book that are so hair-raising. Not only do we have the awful elements of slavery and racism, but there are spirits in here who are not necessarily benevolent spirits. And it's so vivid and lush and terrific. I cannot say enough about this book. Again, it's not going to be for everyone. I think that this book is perfect for lovers of more literary fiction. The author doesn't necessarily tell you the story. Part of the experience of this book is your own kind of imagery and conjuring of these characters and of the situation. It's not as straightforward as the other 3 books on this list, but I definitely think that this is the clear winner in terms of that otherworldly, spiritual, scary storytelling that I look for this time of year. I want to hear from you. Have you read any of these? If so, what did you think? What books would you add to this list? Thanks for watching.